What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Roll Tide Rewind. We're in off-season mode, and we're starting a brand new draft breakdown series. So we're kicking it off with Evan Neal, the Alabama player who's widely expected to be the first Crimson Tide player off the board. So he'll be the first in a series of videos that we'll do breaking down what these guys do well, what the NFL may want them to work on and improve on, and just kind of give a little overview of what their NFL future is going to be. So we'll do this for several Alabama draft eligible players up until the draft at the end of this month, and give a little overview of what their pro careers might look like. So we're starting off with Evan Neal tonight, and we'll show you a couple plays, and then we'll talk about the general scouting report on him, and then where we may see him ending up in the NFL draft here at the end of this month. So we'll get right into it here. Evan Neal, as we know, was the left tackle for Alabama last year, but here on this play, he's the right tackle. And Thomas, you put most of our plays together, so I'll let you kind of take the lead on breaking these down, but just watch this right tackle here.
Yeah, this play's from 2020, and I really like this play. It shows his physicality and toughness as we were talking about it before we were videoing. But like one thing I like about the play is he's looking for someone to block. He's not just staying with a guy and just sitting there, just taking up space. He's head hunting, and he just pancakes a guy. And it's just like we talked about toughness and physicality, and I think that'll translate well into the pro level.
Yeah, for sure. You always love your O-lineman to have a little bit of nasty, a little bit of mean streak, right? Just be able to
Mhm.
finish their blocks, and that's always nice when a guy, if he doesn't have anybody to block, he's going to go around and look for somebody else to block. So that's definitely an important part of the scouting report on him. I feel like that's something that's kind of underrated about his game too. Like that's definitely there, but it feels like just because he's so big, I mean, he's what, 6'7", 337. Feels like we don't
Mhm.
really talk about the nasty part of his game just because we're so kind of impressed by his physical attributes. But it's definitely there, which is something you want if you're going to draft an O-lineman that early. The next play here, this is against Southern Miss in 2021, so he's now the left tackle. But Thomas, he and Javian Cohen are who we really want to watch, kind of their teamwork on this double team, right?
Yeah, so like big thing for offensive linemen is always you want to get to the next level, especially on double teams. And Cohen and Neal do a great job here. And the instant replay of the play shows it a little bit better. But you'll see Evan Neal and Cohen start off with the defensive tackle, and Neal ends up coming off to the linebacker. And this is really big communication wise because Neal has to be able to see that the linebacker's coming to his side, and he has to communicate to Cohen that he's coming off, and Cohen's going to take over. Whereas, say if it went to the other side, Neal has to understand, okay, I have to take over and Cohen has to come off. And like I said, with the toughness translating well, communication definitely translates well to the pro level.
Yeah, and the timing, I think, is an important attribute. And with as inexperienced as Alabama's offensive line was at the start of 2021, I think having Evan as kind of that veteran leader of the room who'd been around and played a lot of football, kind of knows the details of how to block things. I think that helped a ton because early on in the season, you could see things like this just weren't blocked as well. The details weren't there. And I would just attribute that to, a lot of guys on the offensive line who hadn't played a lot of football. But here, like you said, Thomas, they're on the same page. They know what their assignments are. The communication's really good, and that's a really nice hole, really nice lane there for Jace McClellan, who I know we're all really excited about as he comes back from injury. But yeah, really nice job there by Evan and Javian Cohen.
And for this next play, I picked this play out because I remember it from the LSU game. But as an offensive lineman, like pass blocking when you have like a defensive end in front of you is one thing, but whenever the defensive end and defensive tackle run stunts with each other, you have to realize you're staying in a zone. You don't really have a man when it comes to blitzing. You have a zone that you take care of. And Evan Neal does a really good job here. The defensive tackle lines up in front of him and goes to the inside, and then the defensive tackle is going to wrap around and try to get outside of Evan Neal to try to get a sack, but Evan Neal recognizes it and immediately gets in front of the defensive tackle, and Bryce makes a really good play. This stunt is similar to what kind of I refer to as the Terrell Lewis stunt. But he ran against Georgia where he starts on the outside, ends up inside, and makes the sack. They kind of run that, but with the defensive tackle, because 92 had a really good game that day against Alabama, and they're trying to get him more involved, and they've sent him to Evan Neal's side, which in my opinion was a little bit of a mistake.
I think it's crazy he engages the defensive end and then still gets out there to the defensive tackle. Almost any offensive lineman who, once they make contact with the end going inside on the stunt, they're not going to be able to bounce back out in time to get to the tackle. And he he's quick enough to get out there to the tackle and still block him.
Yeah, they might be hoping that they can get out there and just grab a piece of that guy, right, and just slow him down on his way to the quarterback. But yeah, there you kind of see the range, as they say, with offensive tackles, just being able to move all the way out there, which a lot of guys wouldn't be able to do. And for anyone who may not like have much experience or much knowledge of kind of how line play works, what LSU is trying to do here is they're going to swap these two guys right here. This is 92, who Thomas was talking about. So this guy's going to go inside toward Javian Cohen, number 70. 92 is going to loop outside. So what they want Alabama and Evan Neal to do is to block inside this way to create room for 92 to loop around. But that's not what happens. Evan does a really nice job recognizing what's going on, and as Ryan touched on, has the athleticism and the range to get out there and not just grab a piece of 92, but to really lock him down and keep that pocket nice and clean for Bryce Young. So, I mean, that's an athleticism thing, and that's an intelligence thing. That's a quick mental processing thing. So just an all-around really nice play by Evan Neal there. This was one of my favorite plays I've seen from Evan Neal. I remember when we did our breakdown back in December of this play, we were so impressed by his athleticism, we weren't even really sure what the blocking assignment was supposed to be, because he really has it taken care of either way. But really just a 6'7", 350-pound man. I think he's lost a few pounds since this game. He's trimmed it down to 337 now, but a guy of his size just should not be able to move this way. To be able to flip his hips and move his entire body that quickly, but still having that much control is just incredibly impressive. So that really shows you what you're getting in space. A lot of times a guy of that size, you might think that you're getting like a road grader. That's the term that's used for big offensive linemen a lot, who are just really good at run blocking, but might not have the athleticism to be good in pass protection. But with Evan, you can see the movement in space here. He's not just going to block straight ahead and run people over. He's got the movement skills to block athletic edge rushers in space as well. You can really see that here.
What I liked about the play was not only did he take 41 out of the play, but because of how he blocked him, Nakobe Dean is essentially out of the play. Like, he takes a bad angle because of the block, and Trey Sanders is able to run right by him.
Yeah, by Evan giving him that extra push instead of just kind of holding his ground, he's really trying to get him out of the way, get a wider lane for Trey Sanders to run, and that does kind of lock up Nakobe Dean right there. If Evan were just sitting there holding his ground, then Nakobe Dean right here, number 17, has more space to get over there and maybe get in Trey Sanders' way. But because Evan is kind of trying to block his guy downfield, that does kind of clog the lane. That's a good point, Thomas. So the athleticism there, this was the single, we get a better look here. Just watch Evan Neal's hips and how he's able to turn his entire body around right there. I think the single most impressive play I've seen from Evan Neal.
That might be the single most impressive play I've seen from any offensive lineman, ever. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, 337 pounds. That's more than twice what I weigh. And he's just moving this excellent Georgia defender around like he's just having his way with him, like pushing him to point A, from point A to point B against his will, is what the O-line people always love to say, how satisfying it is to push another man from point A to point B against his will. And that's what Evan does right there. And then from the same game here, we see a matchup of two really quality players here. Thomas, I know this was one of your favorite plays that you wanted to make sure we included. So what did you like so much about this one?
Yeah, the more I've watched this play, I think this is my favorite play of the game from Evan Neal. So the guy he's going up against is Travon Walker, and for people that don't know who that is, he is, as of right now, the projected number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft. And this is one of my favorite plays. So Travon Walker is going to try to what I call long arm Evan Neal, and what defensive ends will do, like good defensive ends like Travon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, what they'll do is they'll stretch their arms out as far as they can with the offensive lineman, and they're going to try to do what they do. They're trying to get control. They're trying to push them far enough to knock them off balance so they can throw them one way, throw them the other way, make a rip move, make a swim move to get right to the quarterback. That's what the goal of that is. But if you watch Evan Neal closely, as Trayvon Walker long arms him, Evan Neal just with his hand just snatches his arms out of the way, and you see Trayvon Walker stumble. The reason he's stumbling is because while Trayvon Walker was trying to knock Evan Neal off balance, Evan Neal knocked Trayvon Walker off balance. And I really like that play, just him trying to long arm him. He snatches it, and he just falls right into Evan Neal's lap, and Evan Neal has full control. And James mentioned how the offensive line was really young this year. I think Bryce got sacked like 37 or so odd times. Well, I think Evan Neal didn't allow a sack, and a play like this shows why he never allowed a sack.
Yeah, and I like the patience here too. I mean, you've got a potential top 5, maybe even number 2 NFL draft pick staring you in the face. Trayvon Walker there tries to get in the backfield pretty aggressively, and Evan Neal, he doesn't look panicked. He just always looks in control. And, a lot of times, especially with young, inexperienced offensive linemen, you'll see them get, kind of crazy and lose their hand technique when they're put in a situation like this. But what I like about it here is he's just kind of, his pass set is nice and controlled. It's not rushed. He's not in a panic to try to get out there and make sure he gets in Trayvon Walker's way. He just kind of, he trusts his practice. He trusts his technique. He doesn't get panicked with his hands. He sticks to his technique and does a really nice job there, like you said, knocking Trayvon Walker off balance, Thomas. So that's really nice. Good rep there against a guy who may even go ahead of him in the NFL draft.
Yeah, and Trayvon Walker in that game had 2 tackles the entire game. So that tells you something.
Yeah, for sure. So now that's kind of our overview of Evan Neal's scouting report. We showed you the athleticism, we showed you the mental processing, the athleticism, I think I said athleticism twice, so let me do that again. So that's kind of our scouting report on Evan Neal. We show you the athleticism that he plays with, just being able to move in space the way that a 6'7.5" inch, 337-pound man should not be able to move. The mental processing, just a really solid all-around prospect. We thought we'd also include kind of a screenshot here of his NFL.com scouting report from Lance Zierlein, who's a very respected member of the scouting community. You see Lance gave him a 6.76 grade, which means he's a solid year 1 starter, kind of a plug-and-play starter on the offensive line. So let's scroll down here and see what Lance sees in his game. So we see the top-level competition. We know that, playing against Georgia in SEC championships, playing against SEC competition. The technique, we know he's been well coached at Alabama. What else sticks out here, guys? Stuff that we maybe touched on in those highlights or other things that we maybe didn't point out there.
The big thing for me, I think, is just putting all of it together. I mean, the technical aspects, like he's talking about there, the football IQ, the athleticism, the ability to play multiple positions. He played left tackle, right tackle, and some guard at Alabama. So I think just putting all that together, you don't get a prospect like that very often.
Twitchy out of his stance and into his slides is one thing I think is going to be huge for him. The game's never going to be too fast for him at the next level because he plays so quick and he's so violent but so controlled at the same time. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I like the times up the punches to maximize his length, because in the league, when you're going up against guys like TJ Watt, JJ Watt, all those great defensive ends, if you miss time 1 punch against them, you're just done. So I do like that aspect of Evan Neal.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you just said about that play with Trayvon Walker too, just timing it right, being able to stop Trayvon Walker's momentum, disrupt him, and knock him off balance. And Thomas, before we were filming, you were talking about the versatility that Evan Neal has and how many snaps he's played at a few different positions. Do you have those numbers to go with what Cole just said about the different positions he's been able to play?
Yeah, so his freshman year, people forget he started at left guard, and he played 666 snaps at left guard. He played right tackle his sophomore year. He got 546 snaps. Now, the reason that's lower is because obviously Alabama played 13 games in 2020. They could have played a lot more games. And also the offense was scoring every other play. So you're not on the field a lot when they're scoring in 2-play drives. And then last year he played 857 snaps at left tackle. And obviously that also comes from the previous years when other guys get injured. He kind of slides in and plays left tackle, but 857 snaps. So he's got snaps from almost every offensive line position except for center. So, that's great for the NFL. Not saying he's going to be a guard, but what I'm saying is he could go to a team that has a solid left tackle and he can play right tackle. Just all the versatility, being able to play multiple positions is always key in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely. And just to touch on the weaknesses here, see what they're wanting a little more out of him. Play lacks consistent intensity and attitude. You know, I think we showed earlier with the first play kind of the finishing and the mean. You know, so we know it's there. Maybe they just wanted a little more on a consistent play-to-play basis. One thing I noticed just from my time covering the team was his balance was a little suspect from time to time. Like I remember being surprised at how often he fell down. But I definitely think he's improved on that. I noticed that a lot less in 2021 than in previous years before that. So it's good to see the improvement as well going from the start of his career until now. So there's kind of the general overview of Evan Neal as a prospect. And now, Cole, the main thing you've been wanting to focus on with this video is kind of his fits and where we might expect him to go in about 3 weeks in the NFL draft. So what do you think? Where can we expect him to go? What might be his best fits?
Yep. So Evan Neal is an absolutely elite prospect at left tackle. I mean, he can play, like we mentioned, he can play anywhere, basically on the line. He's just an incredible combination of athleticism, size, football IQ, really everything. So I would be shocked if he falls out of the top 10. I think really his floor, I think he could go anywhere between 1 and 7. Number one to Jacksonville, I think is a really good fit for him. It seems like they're kind of going to go Aiden Hutchinson, most people think, but I still think there's an outside shot. Evan Neal goes number 1. They've got Cam Robinson on the franchise tag. They've tagged him 2 years in a row, which could mean that they aren't necessarily willing to commit to him, or he's not willing to commit to them. So Evan Neal could be the more long-term starter at left tackle, and for now he could start at right tackle over their current right tackle, Jawan Taylor, who actually led the league in penalties last year. I think the low end that he could go is the Giants, who pick at number 5 and number 7. They've been hurting at offensive line for a long time. They have failed to protect Daniel Jones his entire career. They cannot open holes for Saquon Barkley. So adding Evan Neal wherever they decide to put him would be a huge boost to that offensive line. Andrew Thomas they drafted, I believe, 2 years ago. He's actually very good last year, but the year before that he was terrible. So we don't really know 100% if he's going to be the left tackle of the future or not. So I think I would be shocked if he falls past the Giants at 7. Overall, I think the best fit for him, though, is actually number 3 to the Texans. They have Laramie Tunsil on contract at left tackle, but his cap hit in 2023 is actually $35 million, and they can cut him and save $18.5 million. So I would be shocked if they keep him past this year. I think he will be a cap casualty for sure, especially for a team that might be, if they like what they have in Davis Mills, they may be trying to compete next year or trying to get at least save some money to where they can build towards competing in the future. I think it would make a lot of sense to cut Laramie Tunsil, especially because he was very average last year. Actually, he's been very good for his whole career, but he actually had a big step back last year. So I think Evan Neal would be a really good fit in Houston. I think that's where he ends up going on draft day at number 3.
Yeah, I think any of those would work. I think the Panthers at 6 would be a good call. We know they've had big-time offensive line issues. Their right tackle position is pretty set with Taylor Moton, but then left tackle, Evan Neal would be a big upgrade. I mean, they drafted Brady Christensen in the 3rd round, but that should not preclude you from picking a player like Evan Neal with the 6th pick that they have in this year's draft. I think the Jets would be a great pick too. Really, there's nobody who it would not be a good pick for right early on, because a lot of those teams are pretty bad, obviously, if they're picking that early, and have several of them have young quarterbacks they need to protect, and they haven't done a very good job of that to this point. So Jets and Panthers, I think, in addition to what you said, Cole, could be really good fits. Thomas, you're a Falcons fan at 8. If he does happen to fall there, how would you feel about Evan Neal on the Falcons?
You would see a 230-pound man doing cartwheels outside. That's what you'd be seeing. Well,
I'd like to see that.
As much as I would want Evan Neal to come to the Falcons, I know it's probably not going to happen. I agree with what Cole said about the Texans being the best fit. Kind of what I've seen is like the Texans have the 3rd pick, the Jets have the 4th, and the Giants have the 5th. All 3 have very young quarterbacks, and if you care about protecting your young quarterback and you want to give him help, you need to draft Evan Neal. I think the Texans end up drafting Evan Neal if I had to pick today.
I could see that for sure. That would definitely help protecting Davis Mills. So I think that's close to a wrap. What do we think, guys? Any other comments on what we see in Evan Neal's game, potential NFL fits, and just his overall NFL future?
Take this as your sign to go watch that box jump from the offseason again. That's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, that was bonkers.
Or his picture at the draft. Was it the combine? Maybe his picture of where he just looks like a skinny guy and he's 337 pounds.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I saw that circulating on Twitter and everybody just freaking out. I mean, he looked like he could have played. He could have been like 250 pounds, and he's almost 350 pounds. It was crazy.
He looked like a tight end.
Yeah,
Mhm.
really. Our parting note that I'll leave us on is Bruce Feldman of The Athletic, who's one of the most plugged in college football insiders that you'll find anywhere. Does really good work. Does this story called the Freaks List every year, where he basically ranks the top 50, or I think this year it was even 100, basically most freakishly athletic players in college football. And this year, Evan Neal was number one on that list just for what he's able to do. The box jump that we mentioned. If you don't know what we're talking about with that, just Google Evan Neal box jump, and you will be amazed at the things that this guy can do despite being 6'7", almost 350 pounds. So the upside there is tremendous. He's been a great Alabama football player, and we're very excited to see what his eventual NFL future looks like. So thank you guys for tuning in. It's the draft breakdown series for Roll Tide Rewind. Appreciate you guys, and we'll be back with more breakdowns in the coming weeks. Thanks for tuning in, and Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.